So it's time for another segment called Therapy Works, and I'm here this morning with speech language pathologist Robyn Edwards, and we are going to speak about social thinking. Now, in one of the previous segments, we spoke about you just mentioned what social thinking, let's say briefly what social thinking is, but let's get in depth with it. What really is social thinking?
Right. So part of being a speech therapist is not only working on a person's speech or articulation and their language, but also their pragmatic language. What that means is their social communication, what we're doing right now, right? But the back and forth. When I was first training to become a speech therapist, social communication was taught in a very rote manner. It was a lot of look at me, look at me. You know, it was boiled down to really teaching manners as opposed to the dynamic, changeable situation that is social communication.
So it was more like a speak when spoken to type of way it was taught before.
Yeah, and you know, that's not useful. That's not how we are in a social situation. There's no clear defined set of rules or boundaries when we're being social. So how do you teach somebody to be social, right? I came across this treatment methodology called social thinking, and it breaks it down really nicely. It teaches somebody to analyze or think, understand what's coming at them, what's happening around them, interpret that, respond, and then adapt. So it's a very flexible framework.
That seems complex to me.
It is. It's not simple.
Right.
It's a deep learning that has to occur. You know. But being social is not simple. It's something that we take for granted because normally it's something that people learn innately. All we need to learn how to be social is to be around other people. But that's not the case with everybody.
Okay, so as you mentioned, it's not the case with everybody. Who is it that can benefit from this type of intervention?
So this type of intervention was initially designed for kids with high functioning autism, or what we used to call Asperger's. Right? It is a very language-based intervention. It requires, it's not appropriate for kids with no language or lower cognitive scores. As I mentioned, it was initially designed for kids with high functioning autism or people with high functioning autism. It has since, it's over 20 years old, it has since been expanded to include other diagnoses such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, sensory processing disorder, language delay, language disability. So there's a vast range of people that it can help. I mean, I have to admit, as a neurotypical adult, I use it constantly to kind of break down my emotions, analyze the situations happening around me, and then determine how I want to react or adapt myself to make the situation as successful as possible.
Okay, that sounds like there's a little bit of psychology involved in it.
So I think initially it was a very psych-based, or this type of intervention was thought to be very psych-based. But really, it's not so much psychology as it is teaching a person to think, teaching a person to understand, teaching a person to interpret the clues, the cues that are all around us, and then give back what is appropriate.
All right, so how does social thinking help?
So how does it help? The ultimate goal of social thinking is for kids or for people to be able to learn and be part of a group comfortably. Right? It is not a skill. Riding a bike is a skill. Even learning to read is a skill. What we're trying to teach in social thinking is not a skill, but a methodology that a student can apply to as many situations as possible, right? Because no two social situations are the same.
That's right. You know, you could run into somebody with one personality versus another personality, and you have to be mindful of how you respond to that person depending. And, you know, again, it comes so easy for a lot of us, but there are
we take it for granted,
apparently that is not so easy.
Even down to the fact that being social, we think of it as just being two people or a group of people communicating, It's so much more than that. We are social. We have to use social thinking when we're by ourselves. When we are getting dressed in the morning.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we have to think what's going to be happening that day. What are the expectations that I have for my day? What are the expectations that people have of me?
Right.
How am I going to dress, act, be to fulfill those expectations? Right. So it starts even when you're alone. When you're reading a book, watching a movie, those are all, there's social embedded in that. We have to be able to read between the lines. We have to be able to understand what people's nonverbals, what their face is saying, what their body is saying, so that we can respond and adapt appropriately.
Right.
If our brain is missing any of those communications, our responses are going to seem unexpected or awkward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so it's not only for people who are on the spectrum of different varying, let's say, no, I wouldn't want to call it disabilities, but varying places on the spectrum, spectrum of diagnoses.
Yeah.
Would it also be for somebody who is just antisocial? They just.
So definitely, I mean, it can work with anybody that just feels they need some support in this area.
Okay.
As I say, the more I have learned about it, the more I have been able to apply it to my life. I mean, down to driving down the highway and you are, you feel like you're going to have an aneurysm because somebody bad drives you, and, that is a social experience.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems that this is a big topic and a lot to cover. So, and we do have you back for another few weeks, and if all goes well, this will be a continuing segment.